Hey guys, this is Tori Petersen, the host of the I Love You Already podcast. And today we are interviewing someone who I feel like is the epitome of love. His name is Bob Goff. He is the author of this book, Love Does. I mentioned it a few times in the podcast. It is such a good book. He writes a couple other books too. He's a podcast host, speaker. He wears many hats, and he has taken me under his wing, mentored me. I have learned so much from him, and I hope that during this podcast you learn from him as well. Let's do it. Hey, Bob Goff. Welcome to the I Love You Already podcast.
This is great. Good stuff. I'm really glad to be on. And I know you're making a huge difference in the world. So just honored to share a little time with you and learn from you.
Oh, thank you so much, Bob. That means a lot coming from you. This podcast is about loving well and loving radically. And I was like, we have to have Bob Goff on because he is the epitome of just that.
Yeah, we're figuring it out, all of us. I feel like with all of our little picadillos, all together, we make one really well-adjusted person, but it's going to take all of us.
Yeah. So the question that we start all of these podcasts with is this. What in your lifetime has been an act of love that you've received that has influenced who you are?
Yeah, I would say it's people that really understand this idea of love being sacrifice and commitment. Because if we have a right perspective on what love is, that it's sacrifice and commitment, it isn't just a bunch of feelings. It's like actually it's love in action. Paul told his friends, he said, the only thing that matters is faith expressed in love. I think we have a lot of times we have people thinking the only thing that matters is faith expressed in doctrine or faith expressed in agreement on whatever social issue of the day is. But I want to just say expressed in love. And so I'm working on that. I know you are. We're all just amateurs. It's amateur night. We're all just figuring it out.
Yeah. And I think that like love, people can think that it has to be grand and big, but like love can be so simple. I was in the grocery store a few months ago and there was this consistent guy that kept checking me out and not checking me out, but like checking me out, at the store.
Good version, not helpful version.
Checking my items out and putting them into bags.
Yeah.
And every time I would get him, I would just have conversation with him. And I was like, where did you work before you worked at Walmart? He was like, I worked at Dairy Queen. I was like, oh, that's so cool because you get to turn the blizzards upside down. And we would just laugh about it. And then I probably came in, it was probably like the fourth time I came in, and he nudged his manager and he said, hey, that's the girl that I said's always really nice to me. And it's like, that's what love is. Love can be as simple as just being more intentional in the mundane and paying attention to the people who you just happen to be across from.
Well, think about this, that idea that we're known for our opinions and we're remembered for our love. That was a great example of you. Just being remembered like, oh, that's the gal that does this. And then sometimes it gets a little wonky along the way because what we do is we confuse what's our stuff from what somebody else's stuff. Let's say you were at the grocery store and you put all this food on that little conveyor belt. And in front of you, somebody else had all their food on the conveyor belt. And you have the little black partition in between. Like this idea of codependency is you remove the partition and you think their stuff is your stuff. And you, even further, you start eating their Twinkies because you think you're helping them out by eating their food because you think that's a way to honor them. It's just a way to tick them off. And so what I want to do is to just, as we're figuring out love, we need to figure out some boundaries, like what's my stuff, what's your stuff, and we don't have to make everything our stuff.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you're someone who I know you're always like, I'm learning, I'm figuring this out, but you have figured a lot of this love thing out very well. I've been reading this book. I've read it many times, but in preparation for this interview, I was like, I'm just going to go through this again. And I would love for you, can you tell the story of when you became is it called the ambassador of Uganda?
Yeah, they call it the honorary consul. So every country that we have diplomatic relations with has an ambassador in Washington, D.C. And then every diplomat who's not in Washington, D.C. is the consul. So, gosh, it's been, I think, probably 20 years that I've been the consul for the Republic of Uganda. And the crazy part is that I'm not, like, people think I'm the U.S. Representative to them. I'm actually the Ugandan representative to the United States, which always blows people's mind. Me too. It came what would some people would call serendipity, and then you and I, with our faith worldview, would say hand of God at work in really just surprising, unlikely ways. But yeah, they asked me to be the consul, and so I said yes, and I got this State Department card that gives me diplomatic immunity. I mean, it's awesome. Yeah, I don't even need to have car insurance, I bet.
Bob, that's such a big thing to say yes to. Like, did you even know fully what you were saying yes to?
No, it was just like saying yes to marriage. I mean, you don't know what it is. And then I always encourage my friends that are getting married in your first year, like, write a marriage book. And then you can update it and revise it a little bit later.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in that. There's just wisdom. But we think even the thing about expressing your faith, like sometimes we do a really weird way of expressing it, and then we learn more later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of marriage, you are married to Sweet Maria. And we have something that, people who are watching this or listening to this might not know is that, like, we've hung out, me and you, we've hung out, we're friends, and I have gotten to listen to you speak. And one of the things that I hear you and Maria say quite often is that when you guys were creating the culture for your family, and as you guys were raising your kids, you say that I think I've heard Maria say this maybe more clearly, but that you guys wanted to create something that you didn't have. And I love that idea because I think that's what I think that's what a lot of people are doing, but it's definitely what me and my husband are doing. I think we're trying to create, something that we didn't have for our family, for our kids, a different family culture. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that because I think that a lot of people are doing it, but it's easy to know, when we grow up, maybe not in the most ideal situation. I think it's easy to know, like, that's what I don't want to do. But how do we know what we do want to do and how do we get there?
Yeah, well, I just still feel like I got training wheels on this thing, and we've at it 35 years, 6 months, and 22 days. And it's not like a parlor trick, but I think when we date somebody and we start talking about doing a life together, like everything counts. And then somehow I've seen people just slip into where just things didn't matter as much. They stopped keeping count. And so what I decided is that I was going to keep track of the days. So Maria, if you asked her, she could round off to the closest decade. But I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to keep track. I know tonight the sun will set at 6:02 because I just keep track. I feel like the Rain Man. But it isn't just knowing these little arcane facts. It's just being super intentional about why you're doing what you're doing. And then knowing that the backdrop just underneath this is this loop that we're either a reflection of or a reaction to the people who were closest to us. So you could probably see, Tori, in your life that you are a reflection of some of the beautiful things and people that you've met. And you're also a reaction to some of the crazy. And me too, each in our own way. But some people, I think, need to just get this baseline right, that we're all insecure. We're just insecure about different things, and we express it in different ways. So when I get insecure, I get funny. Like the more insecure I get, the funnier I get. Some people get loud. Like the more insecure, the louder. Go to any sports bar and hear a bunch of insecure men cheering for something. And Sweet Maria gets quiet like a church mouse. So what do you do when you get insecure? What's your tell?
What's my tell when I get insecure? I think I would probably be more like Sweet Maria. I think I'd probably get quiet.
Yeah. And so we know how we manifest the things that we're feeling.
Yeah.
And then the idea is figuring out what's that connected to. So if the underlying experience is one of rejection, then you'd say what I did to deal with that is to just get funny.
Yeah.
But with funny, kept keeping it really shallow because I just wanted to be like funny guy,
Yeah.
not deep guy. And I realized that was a protection thing for me. And there was actually more depth that was available in relationships.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I figured out what that was connected to, I'm like, now we got it.
Yeah.
How about you? What breakthroughs have you figured out along the way?
That's so good because I think that when I was growing up in the foster care system, I would try and advocate for myself, and I would try to make a way for me to get into a better home. And oftentimes I feel like when I would try and speak up for myself, I was silenced, right? Like I was told to stop talking. And so my tendency is, I think when I get insecure, is to stop talking, which obviously that's very ironic because our work, right, is to be communicators. And one of my gifts is to communicate. And so it would be I think the thing that would also, on the flip side, I think oftentimes like our greatest strength can be our weakness, or the thing that we can find confidence in can also be the thing that we're going to draw back in and can be our biggest weakness if we're not paying attention to it. And you and Maria, as you were building this like family culture that was so amazing and so strong, you were a lawyer and you were doing all these other things. And so how do we create time for the things that do really matter, even in the midst of trying to, live a dream, chase a dream, create a life outside of maybe our family work, create work outside of the family? How do we also value what really matters?
Yeah. So one shift for me, it was a subtle but important one, is shifting from a viewpoint of will it work to will it last? So there's a lot of things that you could try and you're hoping, will it work? Will it work? But when you put it under the microscope, it isn't something that's going to last. And so that was an important shift for me. Like when opportunities come by, say, will this be a lasting thing? Is this what I want to be remembered for? Or is this just like pet rocks? Like it's just like it worked for a while and then people figured out they're spending $30 for a rock. So that perspective, a little bit longer term one, say, what do you want to be known for? And I want to be known for being somebody who's available. So like that idea, but available doesn't mean everywhere and to everybody in every way. So I'll give you an example. I get loads and loads of phone calls from the back of this book.
I wonder why.
When I get a phone call from somebody and they're on a speakerphone and I can't make out like every third word I'm getting, that's just a little like pro tip here to everybody who's under 40. Like in my generation, that wasn't a polite way to call somebody. Like you would call and say, is it okay if I put you on a speakerphone? Then you just like do that maybe, but you don't just call on a speakerphone. So what I do is I just say, oh, I'm getting every third word. Can you just put up the phone to your ear like I've got? Like that'd be great. And then I'll be able to hear you better. So you don't need to make them feel bad, but you can also set some parameters. I'm happy to put down everything I'm doing right now to talk to you, but I want to do it on these terms that are actually a little better. So I think the idea is to find really healthy ways that work for both people, and then not to spend a lot of time negotiating about it. So I'll give you an example. Like I don't set appointments with people. If they say, let's have coffee, then the response is, sure, let's have coffee. Then the next email is, what's good for you? And then I say, how about Thursday at 2? And then how about Wednesday at 4? How about Monday? And then now we're off to the races. How about Butterbuzz? How about Starbucks? How about this awesome came up? I can't. So what I do is, and it's not to be arrogant, I don't have as much time as I wish I had for that. So I'll just tell people the arc of where I'm going to go. Like I'm going to go overseas in about a week. And so I've told people that want to meet me where I'm going to be at different times, and then they can intersect that or not. And like, that's awesome. Like, and I know where they're going to be and I can intersect it or not. It's finding a different way to get the same thing done that works a little better. Because I would rather talk to you about what you're learning in life than where we're meeting for coffee.
Yeah. And isn't that actually so much more valuable too? Because you're not just like, we're going to meet somewhere and we're going to sit across from each other. Like, you're inviting people to do life with you. And that's what love
Yeah,
actually
totally.
does. Like, you're inviting people in, and you have invited me to a lot of things. And what a lot of
Oh, that was
people,
just selfish on my part. I
oh,
love having you and your dashing husband with us.
Jacob still wears the Mickey Mouse watch that you gave him
Oh, very
all
nice.
the
Got my
time.
man.
Yes, you're matching friendship watches. He wears his
Yes,
all the
that's right. We've
time.
got friendship watches.
Well, I think you inviting me in has meant a lot to me because, and I think, just being invited is, it's so easy to feel excluded, to feel left out in just any part of life. But you have been someone that has always made me feel included and like I am just a part of things that I'm like, am I supposed to be here? And I'm really thankful for
Well,
that.
the that idea of a cool kids table is so different than what the Gospels talked about. Usually, it's not mean spirited. It's just a different version of insecurity. That you have your peeps, and so then you cluster with your peeps inadvertently. We could send out the message that if you were cool enough, you'd be part of this. And so I'm just trying to find ways that as often as we can, we just say, hey, on Wednesdays, I'm at Disneyland on Tom Sawyer Island. I'll see you there. I'll let people know where I'm going to be. I don't write down with you have a really heavy speaking schedule, and I'm trying to have less of that go on, but I don't say where I'm going to be because it feels like an invitation for a home invasion. Because if I say I'm going to be in Cleveland on April 18th, then like that means I just told every bad guy like the silverwares in the upper left-hand corner. So to be sensitive not only to your wants and needs, but then the people around you. A great question I think we've talked about before is not ask that question like, how is life working for me? But to ask the people around you, how is my life working for you? Um, and that's just a really fair question. I've had Sweet Maria tell me, you know what, your life isn't working for me right now. And that was just an act of kindness and courage for her to just say, man, you've just got time for everybody. And I didn't feel picked. I feel
Hmm.
like that basketball game and everybody got picked but me. And here's this person that I love and I've committed to, and we've spent quite a few adventures together, and yet she didn't feel picked. And so we were able to have a conversation around that because I was willing to go deeper than old Bob would have. Old Bob would have just said, I don't know, something lame and changed the subject. But new Bob is hopefully showing up a little bit more real and willing to learn and eager to learn. And so I think that's what we can bring to our friendships and
Yeah.
relationships that matter the most to us.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because I have a specific question that I've really been wanting to ask you. And I think it's more like you're about to give me some advice. Okay. This is like a very mean question. But because I was reading this book and, this was the first book you've written and you've done much more work. You've written more books since Love Does. But I feel like this is the book that people associate you with, like Bob Goff, Love Does. And when you change and when you evolve, like when you become a different Bob than who you were during your previous work, but this work stays the same, this piece of work always stays the same. I think about this with my first book, there are pieces of us that will always be the same to the people perceiving them, even though we change. How do you I don't know. How do you wrestle with that when you change, but people perceive you as old
Yeah,
Bob?
yeah. So we have these points of interaction, like you just interact with somebody, and that's your snapshot.
Yeah.
That's the Polaroid that you've got. It's
Yeah.
like that is what. And so a lot of times somebody might know me as a really happy guy, and I am a really happy guy, pretty upbeat, thinking about what's next. But I also am a really introspective guy. I get sad a lot. I get super lonely. And so people don't experience that side. They're like, Balloon Bob. And so where the rub comes in, if you are out speaking or I'm out speaking and I'm not feeling like Balloon Bob, can you let people know in a really nice way? Like just go with authenticity. Just
Yeah.
otherwise we become a caricature of who we are. We
Yeah.
become Balloon Bob, and Balloon Bob's on the bus. There's certain like DNA in there that remains the same. I used to go around speaking a lot, a lot, a lot. And now I'm just trying to stay closer to home. You've been out to this place that we have nearby, and I'm just trying to bring the party to me a little bit more. I'm not interested in an arena full of people. That's a great thing for a different reason. I just want to be around a fire pit. Give me 6 or 8 of us sitting around a fire pit, like doing life, figuring out whatever it is that we need to get better at. Like that's kind of my thing. I'm like Grandpa Bob now.
Yeah, Grandpa Bob brings a bunch of people around and he kind of lets everyone in. You let everyone in on your secrets. You tell people really how they can succeed in life. What many people, don't know just from listening to this is that your advice has drastically changed my life. And I'm actually sitting here doing this podcast with people that I met through your ministry, and you're the one who told me that I needed to start a podcast. You're the one who told me how to do it. And so what I admire so much about that is that you can't have a scarcity mindset to function that way, right? Like I think you have to think like there are enough stages, there are enough microphones, there are enough podcasts to go around. Like we have enough. And I just really, really admire about you. You're not trying to keep secrets so others don't progress. You're just lifting everybody up.
And
Thanks,
then maybe
Thanks,
try
Grandpa
some
Bob.
things. Just try some things that don't make sense. What we've been doing some work in Uganda for a while now, and we decided that we were going to start a university. And I've just told you more than I know about universities. Like my worst subject in school was school. Um, but we decided that we want to take these kids from diapers to doctorate. So we just said, we're going to do this thing. And we started in. So we have closed on the land, and we are in escrow on a square mile of land to start a zoo. And we literally spent this morning shopping for giraffes. I'm not even kidding. Is that fun?
That's
So you
amazing.
get an idea that seems nuts, but then pretty soon the flywheel starts to spin and it just works.
Yeah.
So crazy how that works.
Thank you so much, Bob, for not just who you are to me, but for who you are to so many people.
Oh, I'm just so glad we're in it together, Tori, and keep leading with love. And you have the ear of a entire generation or two. So keep at it, and you'll have quiet questions. You'll have times of deep reflection, and you'll scratch your head and all that. And this is all just refining what you've got. 2 Peter 1:3, God has already given us everything that we need to lead beautiful, godly lives.
Yeah.
And whether faith guides your steps and you're listening to this, or you're none of the above or all the above, man, just keep true to yourself. Like who were you made to be, and live into that. And you're a great example of that.
Thank you, Bob.